Every child has a story. No matter who they are or where they live, they have dreams of doing big things. They have unique talents and they face obstacles. But some children face more obstacles than others, sometimes a lot more. Things like generational poverty, schools that are under-resourced, criminal justice, foster care, hunger, and even homelessness. Believe it or not, there's actually a number that can predict how many obstacles like these a child will face. This number is their zip code. Now, there isn't any one person to blame for this. It is a problem generated by 1,000 factors, and it continues one generation after another. This problem can seem overwhelming and too complicated to solve, but it isn't. Friends of the Children is a nonprofit organization that's been breaking the cycle of poverty one child at a time. We know that any child in any situation can succeed, even those facing the most obstacles. To that end, we provide a salaried professional mentor called a friend for each child who works with them from kindergarten to graduation, 12 and a half years, no matter what. These mentors work with each child every week on 9 core assets of personal strength, like growth mindset, problem solving, and self-management, all of which they will need to overcome the many obstacles in their path. It is a big investment to commit to a child for their entire childhood, but it's a model that's been working for over 25 years. While 60% of our children's parents have been impacted by the criminal justice system, 93% of our children avoid the criminal justice system. 50% of our parents didn't have the support necessary to graduate high school. 83% of Friends Youth celebrate graduation. 85% of our parents started parenting during their teen years. 98% of Friends Youth wait until after their teen years to become parents. Each dollar invested in a child returns $7 to the community. The Harvard Business School Association of Oregon estimates that helping one child through this program can save the United States around $900,000. But what these numbers don't capture is the immeasurable value of changing one single life. Children in our program become leaders in their community and successful in their careers, which has ripple effects to their siblings, peers, and neighbors, but also to their children, breaking the cycle of generational poverty. Friends of the Children is growing rapidly as communities across the country are experiencing the power of how one changes a child's story. One friend, one child, 12 and a half years, no matter what. Become a part of this story today.
Good evening. My name is Abhi Talwalkar. I am the co-founder and board chair of Friends of the Children here in the San Francisco Bay Area.
And I'm Michael Rugen, the executive director of Friends SF.
Thank you all for joining us tonight. The past year has been a challenge for all of us, but it's been especially challenging for the children and families we serve at Friends of the Children SF Bay Area.
COVID has hit communities like Bayview Hunters Point much harder than most neighborhoods in San Francisco, medically, financially, and emotionally. And the turmoil around racial justice issues has only compounded the challenges for the families we serve, all of whom are people of color. You're going to hear a great discussion tonight, moderated by Priya David Clemens, host of KQED Newsroom. You'll hear from our 4 panel members who know the Bay Area community well. They'll tell you about daunting challenges our kids and our families are facing, and about the extraordinary work being done by the city and its nonprofit partners like Friends of the Children to support them.
Now, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our moderator, KQED Newsroom host, Priya David Clemens.
We're here today with 4 people who work closely with children and families in the Bayview, and we're going to ask them to tell us how the traumatic events of the past year have affected the children who live there, and what the city and its nonprofit partners, like Friends of the Children, are doing to support those children and their families. Maria, let's start with you. What do you believe has been the single most difficult problem faced by children and their families in the Bayview over the past year?
Thank you, Priya. And before I start, I just want to say thank you to Friends of the Children and just the phenomenal work that you do to support children throughout our city, but particularly children in the Bayview. And it's your commitment that really makes the system for childcare providers and children providers work. So thank you. In terms of what's happened this past year, COVID has been terrible. I know that we'll speak later about just the education impact for our children, but from our perspective over at the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, the education impact is just one aspect of the trauma that our children are experiencing. There's also the social emotional aspects as well. And combined together, you really have what we're seeing as the COVID avalanche for our children and families.
As an organization, what we faced during COVID-19 was looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it was that first rung of food security, of housing, of education was what was most impacted during this period of time. So, holistically, what we did is we took an approach working with our city partners and our community-based organizations and really designed this holistic ecosystem that would wrap around a family so we could help with education. We were still assisting individuals with going out and finding employment opportunities and working alongside, Friends of the Children as well, too, who is a part of our Black to the Future initiative as one of its partners.
DJ, thank you for sharing that with us. I want to turn now to Frederique. You're the Director of Programs for Friends of the Children, and I'm curious what you all saw as the biggest challenge over the past year.
Thank you, Priya. I feel, first of all, honored and blessed to have such wonderful partners at basically helping us combat what I would say is, a lifetime experience for all of us. But specifically, the pandemic has forced an already under-resourced neighborhood isolated from jobs, isolated from food, isolated from the rest of opportunities. And more importantly, the communities that, the families that are enrolled in our program, they were specifically selected based on challenges and barriers that they face, circumstances or trauma. Now, with the pandemic, they have been forced back into those very environments because of school closures. For our families, schools serve, for many reasons, a place of safety. It's a place of access to a daily meal. It's a place for folks to have positive peer relations. It is a place where they are in an ecosystem where they are supported. The strategy of the city has been to basically provide these community schools, wraparound services, and now that was closed to them. And it's been devastating.
Let's turn specifically to something that Maria brought up first, which is the academic challenges over this past year. Could you talk about the achievement gap, particularly in terms of education over this past year?
We know that a lot of our children, particularly living in Bayview, particularly our African American, Latino, and Pacific Islanders, were already not at that baseline. So when we talk about the achievement gap that these children experienced this past year, you're only capturing a portion of the real story, because we really need to think about what the compounded learning loss that they've experienced throughout their entire educational life. So it was really, really crucial for us at the city to, number one, recognize that, and then number two, say that it's not just digital divide or access to digital devices. It was really about access to someone who can help guide that young person through the digital curriculum, as well as help that young person persist and stay on task. Because we knew that those were some of the issues that a lot of our young people were experiencing. And honestly, I feel like this is where our nonprofit agencies really, really thrive. And this is the magic, where you have nonprofit agencies that have caring adults like Federic and DJ who are providing that just safe, emotional supports for our children and their families, which then opens them up for learning and for really just thriving. And I think that's the beauty of what we're seeing that's happening with Friends of the Children and the partnership that they have with all of our other service providers in the city.
And Gabrielle, you were seeing this in a very up close and personal way. Could you maybe share with us a story, a thought about this past year, particularly in terms of academics and learning loss?
As EJ mentioned earlier about thinking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that's really what we've seen this year, right? When families are not housed, when they don't have enough to eat, it's incredibly challenging to engage in remote learning. It's very challenging for many families, even with those things, to engage in remote learning if any of you have kids at home. And so what we've seen is this gap between more and less resourced families and students. It's just deepened and intensified. And what we have seen is the students who have been able to emerge the most unscathed are the ones that we've been able to align really closely with our CBO partners, the ones that we've been able to get into learning hubs, the ones who have organizations like Friends of the Children partnering really closely.
All our kids come into our program at least one grade level below. And we try to narrow that gap. When COVID hit, out of our 93 kids, now they are average, and 2 grade levels below. Of 93 kids, we only have 4 kids that are reading at grade level. I mean, that's insane. And it's the mental health piece as well, the trauma, the instability being caused by not being in the classroom around supportive adults, by not being basically supported in a caring way. It's not just learning your ABCs. It's the hustle and the struggle, and it's been a real challenge. This is going to take a village to do this effort. These inequities existed before. Now they're just exacerbated like the Red Sea. This is a generational lift that we have to do.
Gabrielle, we've talked about the academic gap, and I'd like to ask you about a related issue. So, as the social worker at Hillcrest Elementary School, have you seen a change in your students' behavior and emotional state over the past year?
It's been really intense. I've been at Hillcrest going on 9 years, so I'm pretty familiar with the school community at this point. As I mentioned earlier, it's difficult to pull apart basic needs from mental health needs when we're talking about kind of the level that many of our families are working under in this last year. About 85% of our students live under the poverty line in San Francisco, and 40% are homeless. So it's a large percentage of our school population. And unfortunately, Friends of the Children has not been able to provide a mentor for every single one of my students yet. I'm waiting for the day. So it's been really hard. I really believe that in order to effectively close academic gaps and support families' mental health, the district, the city, and our amazing and vibrant nonprofits have to work together in total partnership. And Friends of the Children has been really vital in stepping up to provide that connection between the school and the family and being an extra positive adult role model. The list goes on. And this kind of intense relationship building has been really effective. And we've seen it be really beneficial for students' mental health.
I want to turn now to a question for Gabrielle from Mariella. She says, I have a 5-year-old son, and I know he needs all the adult support he can get, but I'd be reluctant to trust a complete stranger to provide that support. Could you tell us about the Friends of the Children program and how you get to that point of trusting the people who are working with children?
Well, I'm also the mother of a 5-year-old son, and I completely understand the hesitancy to trust a stranger at first. And I think that I would say that when working with any new adult in your child's life, I'd really advise you to get to know their program, ask questions about the hiring and screening process, which I know about at Friends of the Children is very rigorous, and spend time with the mentor and the child together. Talk to Frederic, really start to understand the organization. Additionally, if you were a parent at my school, I probably would talk about my relationship with Friends of the Children. because we have been in a relationship for, gosh, how many, 5 years now? I think we're going on. And I feel really comfortable. It's an organization that I feel really comfortable vouching for. I really believe in it. I've seen positivity come out of their work time and time again. And we've really built incredibly deep relationships with them. And really, they've built incredibly deep relationships with the families that we work with. And they've often provided that bridge between the school and the family, which has been incredibly healing and just a really beautiful experience.
DJ, you are a member of the board of Friends of the Children. What's unique about the program? What's unique about what they offer?
Well, the most unique thing that comes to mind for me, because I'm putting on my executive director hat as well too, is that all of the funding that comes to Friends of the Children is actually hand-to-hand donations. So I think that's huge. That's one. I think two, the model that we have of working with kids intentionally so young is so key. You don't find that elsewhere when you can tell an individual, we are going to be with you from K through 12. First, most folks would just say, okay, hold on a second. That's a bit much. That's a bit audacious. But we know, catching young people in 3rd and 4th grade starts to speak to that prison to pipeline. So it's really what separates Friends of the Children apart from so many other programs and organizations that are out there.
Thank you so much, all of you. And we are going to have to wrap up this amazing conversation. Thank you for the hope that you are bringing to all of us through what you do each day.
Thank you to Priya and all of our panelists for a sobering look at the challenges faced by the children and families in the Bayview and the inspiring work you're doing to help them meet those challenges. I hope that you, our guests, learned a lot from the discussion. Thanks to each of you who donated tonight, we have moved closer to our $1.5 million campaign goal. And remember, our challenge grant will continue until we reach that goal, so every dollar donated for the duration of our campaign will be doubled.
Abby, for a lot of us, it's starting to feel like we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, look at us. We're here without masks on today,
That's
less
right.
than 6 feet apart. But I think what we've heard tonight is there are challenges that go way beyond masks, way beyond the pandemic, and those problems in communities like Bayview Hunters Point are going to last for a very long time. And that's one more reason why we commit to stay with every child for 12 and a half years, no matter what. Thank you all for joining us on that journey.
Good night, everyone.
everyone.